Hey, what's up guys? In today's lesson of Windows Server 2019, we're going to be taking a look at Active Directory domain services. Some of the topics we're going to be covering in this specific episode is what exactly is Active Directory domain services, Active Directory domain services logical components, and then also physical components of Active Directory. Now, if I'm being perfectly honest with you guys, this list of topics was initially going to be a lot longer. It would have included things like Active Directory objects and organizational units and a whole bunch of other ones. But then the episode would be 2 hours, 3 hours, or even longer, and nobody wants that. So instead, I'm going to divide this into smaller, more easily manageable tasks for you guys, or more manageable videos. Still going to cover those topics nonetheless. They're just going to be in the next episode, and the one after that, and so on and so forth. So stay tuned and we'll be covering those topics. If you guys are new to this channel, please consider subscribing. Otherwise, you will not know when the next episode comes out with those topics, mind you. And maybe also give the video a like while you're at it. So I think with all of that out of the way, let's go take a look at our first topic being Active Directory domain services, or I should say, what exactly is it? So what is Active Directory domain services? Well, it consists of both logical and physical components, and I've got tables here at the bottom for you guys, which actually shows you that. Logically wise, you can see there's quite a boatload, meaning partitions, schema, domains, just to mention a few. Physical side, we've got domain controllers, data stores, and so on and so forth. I'm going to briefly give you a description of each of these, but before I can do that, I think it's probably best if I tell you way from the beginning what exactly Active Directory does. Now, it does quite a lot of things, never mind group policies and all that, but in a nutshell, it's an authentication server. Not the only thing it does, but that's one of the main things we normally use in Active Directory for. So that being said, it's a role you install on server first of all, for those of you guys that don't know. So if you have an existing server that has roles on it or doesn't, either way, you're going to have to go and add a role called the ADDS role. That's the Active Directory Domain Services role. If you don't know how to go and add a role, we actually did show you guys how to go and do that in a previous video. What does it actually stand for, the ADDS? We've said that quite a few times, Active Directory Domain Services. What kind of server is this? It's an authentication server. It's not the only thing it does. I mean, it's also going to go and enforce group policies and all kinds of things like that. But the main purpose here is it's an authentication server. So generally what's going to happen is if you've got, for example, 3 computers in your environment, these are just normal computers. You can imagine they've got Windows 10 on them and that's that. So what the average Joe would go and do is you would go sit down at your PC, let's say it's PC 1. You would click on your account, not type in the name. Normally just click on your account. It's normally just going to be 1. And you're going to go and provide your password, assuming there is a password. What's going to happen then there is local authentication is going to occur. It's going to check on that PC itself, if you are in fact the owner of that account and that device. So the fact that your password matches that username is normally enough proof that you are in fact the owner of said account or device. So that's local authentication. And if you've just got 3 normal PCs, that's what's going to happen on each of these PCs. So if I go to PC 1 and I'm the owner of PC 1, I should be able to log on. If I go to PC 2 here and I try and log on, it's probably not going to even show my account. But let's assume for some weird reason it does show my account. Does that actually mean it's my account? No, it's not. It just happens to have the same name, most likely. If you're going to type in your password on PC2, it's not going to log on because it's going to check on that PC now locally, whether that PC belongs to you. And it's going to say, oh, this is not you. So what exactly happens now if you have an ADDS situation? Well, in a case like that, you're going to go and drop a server. You probably already have that in your company. And that server is going to go do the authentication for you now. So previously, we had PC1 authenticate to itself to check if you are in fact the owner of that PC. And in a server situation, what we're going to go and do is all the PCs in your company normally are going to be joined to a domain of sorts. It's normally going to be your company name followed by .com or something. So in this case, I'm going to pretend to join all 3 of these machines to a domain called burningice.tech.com. You can call it whatever you want. I'm just making up something. I don't really have a domain like that, at least not yet anyway. So they have to all be joined to a domain, preferably the same domain, obviously. And if you've joined your machines all to the same domain, they should, in theory, all be able to authenticate to the same central point of authentication, being that server in the middle. So that server in the middle, what kind of server is that going to be now? That is going to be your Active Directory server, the one where you go and install ADDS. So once you've installed that role on there and you made your domain or joined your existing domain, PC1, PC2, and PC3 respectively will all be able to go and authenticate to that server. So you can see PC1 is going to go and ask that server now. So if I go to PC1 now and I type in my account, let's say my account's username is Burning Ice Tech, I'm going to have to actually first of all type it in now. If it wasn't on a domain, I could just go and click on the account, which would be a workgroup scenario. Now the user, being me, is going to have to go and type in the account, the username. That's going to be Burning Ice Tech in my case. Or it could be your employee number, it could be your actual name. You type it in, you provide your password. Now your PC is going to go and contact that server, which is normally on premises in most cases. These days it's not limited to that. You also have Azure Active Directory and all that. Not a topic for today. But that is a topic in this course, by the way. So we are going to be talking about Azure Active Directory in this course as well. I mean, this is Server 2019, which is designed for the cloud, in case you guys don't know. Anyway, PC1 is going to contact that server. It's going to say, hey, server, I've got someone that just typed in Burning Ice Tech on me. Does this person or this account actually exist? The server is going to go and check and check and check. You can basically imagine this as an old phone book. I mean, nobody uses phone books nowadays. But in the old days, in most countries, if you had a phone book, you were either able to look up someone's number by using their name, or in some cases, depending on the country, you could actually even find their home address in the yellow pages or whatever you would call your phone book in your particular country. So now your server is going to go and check and check and check and see, oh yes, we do have an account called Burning Ice Tech, so that checks out. Then the PC is going to say, okay, that's great. This person provided the following password, which is maybe 123. Does that password match this account? The server is going to go and check and check and check and say, yep, it checks out. So therefore, it must be legit. It must be the owner of that PC or that account. So the server is going to say, you know what, that looks all legit to me. I'm going to go and issue you with what we call a token. I'm probably going too far for this course now. But you can think of this token as a hall pass, basically. So in some schools in some countries, you would have a hall pass, which allows you to walk in the hall, when it's class time. Generally you have to be in class. You'll find in some countries, if you go to an office park and you need to go and do some sort of business at this organization, they don't allow you to just go in unless you work there. Now, if you are a guest or a visitor, they would sometimes authenticate you at the entrance. This could be actually the reception or when you drive your car in, by the security, assuming there's security. They would authenticate you. They're going to go and jot down your details, your name, your last name, your cell phone number, maybe even your car's registration and all that. And then that's basically you that's been authenticated. In some cases, either at that security gate or at reception, they would sometimes give you a pass of sorts. It's a little badge. Sometimes it's a sticker that you put on your shirt that says visitor or guest. Sometimes it's an actual card that'll clip to your shirt, with little alligator clips. It says visitor or guest. Now what's going to happen is when I walk around at that company's premises, if someone sees me and they don't recognize me, but they see me with that badge that basically says visitor or guest, they know, okay, you know what? This person, we are aware of this person's presence. He or she has been authenticated. But if I walk around, they don't recognize me and they don't see a badge like that on me, security could possibly tackle me to the ground because they see me as a threat. Who are you is the question. Have you been authenticated? What are you doing here? What are you trying to do? So now with that guest or visitor badge, I can obviously go to certain areas now because I've been authenticated. Obviously, it goes without saying I have limited access. I cannot just go willy-nilly wherever I want. So every time I try and go to certain areas, people there might say, hey, who are you? Oh, okay, you've been authenticated. Pass on through, or no, you are not allowed because you don't have access. The same thing kind of sort of is going to happen here with this token. It's like that badge. So now this PC, being PC1, has a token and it's been authenticated. That's you now. And when you try and access that same server, the one that's got ADTS on it, or any other server on the network, or actually even any other device on the network, they are going to ask you, hey, wait, who are you? And your PC is going to provide this token saying, no, 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 I've been authenticated. Don't stress. And they're going to say, okay, you know what? That seems fine. Your token seems legit. pass on through. So that's basically what's going to happen with an Active Directory server. It's not the only thing, but one of the main things it does is it allows authentication to occur. It's an identity server, identity being user accounts. So I can go and put all my people's accounts on there. I can put you into groups on an Active Directory server. So if you are working for the sales department, I can put your account in the sales group. And whenever I need to go and configure something regarding the sales department, let's say it's a policy or permission, instead of applying it to each and every user, because there could be a lot of you, I'm just going to go and apply that policy or permission to the group. I mean, imagine there's 1,000 people in a sales department for a company, and you need to go and apply some sort of configuration for all of those people. Are you honestly going to go to each and every one of those people and go and configure that? Heck no. So why not go and do what they refer to as a bulk operation, where you can go and chuck all of those people into one group, do it once, and do it smarter. You know, it's that old saying where they say, don't work harder, work smarter. So let's go back to those two tables of ours. So with regards to these two tables, the first one we have here is partitions. Now, what is partitions? A partition, or naming context, is a portion of the Active Directory Domain Services database. Although the database consists of one file named ntds.dit, I'll put it on the screen for you guys, different partitions contain different data. For example, the schema partition contains a copy of the Active Directory schema. The configuration partition contains the configuration objects for the forest. And the domain partition contains the users, computers, groups, and other objects specific to the domain. You can actually store copies of the partition on multiple domain controllers and update them through directory replication. So what a lot of companies do, especially if they've got more than one branch, so if you've got branch offices, they will go and put a root Active Directory at the main branch, being your head office in most cases. So that root Active Directory is basically the parent server, the main one. And at each branch office, they will go and drop what we call an RODC. It stands for Read Only Domain Controller. It's essentially a clone of the Active Directory that you've got at the head office, although the people at that branch have zero permissions on it in most cases, or very limited permissions. The only permissions they will have is permissions that I've delegated to them, which we actually showed you guys in video 1 or video 2 of this course. I think it was episode 2 of this course, how you can go and delegate access. So even if you've got IT people at that branch office, they can in most cases do nothing on that Active Directory, or if they can do something, it's going to be very limited. Only what I've specifically granted them access to go and do. So what most companies will go and do is, if there's a new employee or something that needs to take place, I'm going to go and create the user account for that, a new employee at that branch office. I'm going to go and create that at head office level, and it's going to go and replicate that change to all of my clones, being the RODCs at branch levels. And after about a minute or 2 or 5 minutes, that guy or that lady is going to be able to go and log on at branch level. So it's a matter of, okay, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to go create the account, tell the person to go make a cup of coffee, and by the time they get back, they will be able to log on because I've created their account. Most likely, it's going to be a temporary password. Normally, we go and use a temporary password when we create user accounts, but that's something we'll still get to on at a later point in time. And then our next one here, what is schema? A schema is the set of definitions of the object types and attributes that you use to define the objects created in Active Directory services. A domain, now that is a logical administrative container for objects such as users, computers, hell, groups. A domain maps to a specific partition, like we said, and you can organize the domain with parent to child relationships to other domains. So like we said a few moments ago, you are going to go and make yourself a parent Active Directory server, or better known as a root Active Directory domain server, that you're going to go and drop at your main branch, being your head office in most cases. If you only have one branch, well, I guess then you're only going to have the one server in most cases. But if you find yourself in a situation where your company or the company you work for has more than one branch, there's a good chance they're going to want to go and drop Active Directory servers physically at branch level. Now, this is not something all companies do, it's just something that most companies do because it's quicker and easier for people at the branch level to go and authenticate against the server which is physically in the branch. That server is just unfortunately usually an RODC, a read-only one, which means they cannot go and change anything on it unless I specifically delegated them permissions to go and do so. So whatever I go and do at a head office, that's going to synchronize or replicate back to that branch of them, wherever they might be. And this could be something as simple as creating a user account for. It could be resetting a password, it could be anything. So that's the parent-child relationships. And then we've got this one here called domain tree. Now I see with Server 2019, Microsoft refers to this as domain tree, but in the past, 2016, 2012, on the previous versions of Server, they would normally call this a tree. That's how I know it. I know it as a tree, not a domain tree, but now Microsoft refers to this as a domain tree. It's the same thing. So I'll draw a picture for you guys in a moment after I've explained forest as well. So domains, domain trees, and forests are all going to be in this picture. What is a domain tree? It's a hierarchical collection of domains that share a common root domain and a continuous domain name space, DNS space. And then we've got forest. This is a collection of domains that share a common Active Directory root and schema which have two-way trust relationship. Alright, so and then for the little picture I promised you guys. So I think for the picture, obviously I don't have enough room here, so I'm just going to go and quickly remove this physical components on the right hand side and put my forest there. There we go, there's a forest. So if you're going to go and make yourself a brand spanking new server, one of the first things you're going to have to go and do is create what they refer to as a forest. That's the top level. So the highest level you get is forest, then you get tree, then you get domain. That's the lowest one. So it's not forest, tree, and then leaf. Some people think it'll be leaf. That would be funny. No, it's called domain. So if it's your very first server and your only server, you're going to have to go and create a forest. If it's a server you're going to go and add to an existing environment, then you're not going to go and create a forest. Very, very unlikely. It's also unlikely you're going to go and create a domain server for that matter, because normally your company already has existing servers. Your job is probably just going to be to maintain the existing environment. So now most companies only have one forest. The only times I've seen in real life when companies normally have more than one forest is if one company bought another company. There was like some sort of merger, and each of these companies had their own respective forests, and to go and recreate the whole environment from scratch is just too much work. It's going to take too long. It's going to cost too much money. So instead, they just kind of like link the two together, with trusts and all that. So in a forest, you can have multiple trees. And in each tree, you can have multiple domains. So you can see on the left-hand side, that tree has maybe just one domain. That's the triangle. There's one domain there. On the right-hand side, I've got 3 domain controllers there. So there's no limit as to how many domain controllers you can have. There could be one domain, it could be multiple domains, and each domain can have multiple domain controllers for that matter. So you've got a forest, you've got a tree, then you've got your domains. So in your domains itself, you can have a domain controller. So I'm going to pretend now for a moment that those triangles are controllers. The top one being the root domain controller. That's the main server. That's the one that's probably going to be at your head office most likely. So the one at your head office, what do we call that? We call that the root Active Directory, the root server. All the other ones, if you've got ones at the branch offices, if you're lucky enough to have that, what do we call those? We call those RODCs, read-only domain controllers. Those are clones basically of the one you've got at head office, the root one. And we call these also childs. So you've got a parent-child relationship. So that's what we spoke of there as well. So the root one is going to be your parent one, and the RODC ones, which are read-only, they're going to be childs. So whatever I go and do the parent one or the root one, that's going to basically go and replicate to the child domains here. Okay, then our next component on the list is sites. Active Directory sites, in my experience, are normally most commonly used for companies that have multiple branches which are spread across different geographical locations but fall under the same domain. Let's imagine for a moment we have a company. Let's call this company X, for argument's sake. Company X maybe has, I don't know, 3 branches, 2 of which are in the United States of America, USA for short, and then we'll go and dump one maybe in the United Kingdom, being UK. Now, for most things we need to do, this won't really be a problem, but there will be a time or certain points in time when we need to go and configure something which is specific to a certain area, perhaps. Maybe this setting or configuration is only applicable to the American branches, maybe it's only applicable to the United Kingdom branches, and this poses a problem. So this is where sites come in now. So what you can go and do is you can go and, for argument's sake, take all the branches in America, in this case it's just 2 of them, chuck them into one site. Let's call this site 1 for now. I'm just going to give it a random name. So you can go and put all the American branches in a site called site 1. I can go take all my UK branches, put it in another site. Let's call that site 2. And now that I've got these sites, whenever I need to go and configure something or set something for something, let's say this is now for a specific region. So whenever I find myself in a situation where I need to go and configure something only for the American branches, I simply just go and choose that site, which is site 1, and there you go. You can go and configure for that site, and it's going to not apply it to the other sites. People sometimes use this, maybe there's something I want to go and do, but I don't want to do this in business hours, because you can see the UK and America obviously fall in different time zones. So if it's a setting I don't want to apply within business hours, I can go and configure the setting for site 1 in a certain hour, and I can go and configure the same setting at site 2 at a different time of day, because site 2 is obviously going to fall in a different time zone. So whatever your reason might be, this is going to really make your life a lot easier when you want to go and apply settings, but not at all the branches the same way or at the same time for that matter. So that's basically sites in a nutshell. It's absolutely not the only thing sites can go and do, definitely not. But I think this is a good way to start you guys off, just to introduce you into what we call sites. We're not talking about websites here. No, no, no. Not the same thing at all. Absolutely not. All right, folks, so let's move on to the next one, being OUs, in other words, organizational units. Now, when it comes to organizational units, which are known as OU for short, it's a container object for users, groups, and computers to provide a framework for delegating administrative rights and administration by linking group policy objects, or GPOs for short. The container one, being the last one on the logical side, is a container. It's an object that provides an organizational framework for use in Active Directory domain services. You can use the default containers or you can create custom containers. You can't link GPOs to containers. Now, this sounds very complicated, but in a nutshell, if you were to go to your Active Directory server, the users and computers, which we did in episode 2, if you were to go there, on the left-hand side, you're going to find a bunch of folders there. And those folders you see there by default, those, let's call them built-in folders. Those ones are generally referred to as containers, the ones that Microsoft generates for you. You can go make your own if you want to. The ones we normally make ourselves, it's not the only thing you can go make, is OUs. So you'll find if you go right click there, there's an option that says create new OU or organizational unit. That's what we did in episode 2. So in episode 2, I went and created organizational units for each branch. So I made 3 branches that I can't even remember what I called them. And each of these respective branches had their own OU. I chucked each branch into an OU of its own. Each department in this branch had its own little OU. And the reason I did that is because if you go and create OUs, which is basically a fancy name for a folder, I can go and link what we call GPOs to those folders. GPOs is group policy objects. In other words, policies, permissions. So I can go and say what the people in a certain department can do or can't do, or I can go and turn things on or off. I can go and tweak certain things in certain departments. So as long as you are on my domain, I can go and chuck you into certain groups if I want to go and do that. And I can go and put you into certain OUs. That's the main thing here. It's a fancy folder. And when I put you into that OU, I can go and apply settings, policies, group policies to that folder. So if I put you into an OU called sales, I have the ability to go and apply a GPO, which is policies now, to that OU folder. And that GPO could be anything. I could go and prevent you from installing programs. I can change your desktop background. I can go and hide your system clock. I can go and turn certain programs on, turn certain programs off. I can go and do all kinds of fancy stuff. Containers, no, you cannot do that. It's not a folder. It's going to look like a folder. The icon is just going to look slightly different. But you do not have the ability to go and link a GPO to that folder. In other words, in short, apply a group policy to the people in that folder if you happen to have people or computers or stuff in that folder. So because most companies, including myself, like to go and apply group policies, we normally go and create, for the most part, only OUs, because somewhere along the line, it might not be now, it might not be tomorrow, somewhere, sometime, you're probably going to want to go and apply a GPO. So yeah, that's pretty much the OUs and containers in a nutshell. And then our next one on the list, being the first one on the physical list, I keep taking the physical list away and then I put it back and then I take it away, as I need space to go and do my little drawings. The first one is domain controllers. We did already cover that to a certain extent. So when it comes to domain controllers, a domain controller contains a copy of the Active Directory Domain Services database. For most operations, each domain controller can process changes and replicate the changes to all the other domain controllers in the domain. So that's the actual description, the official description for it, but most of the time we can only go and do this on the root Active Directory. So you'll find that most domain controllers are normally RODC domain controllers, read-only, and they don't have the ability to go and synchronize to the other domain controllers, not really. We do sometimes have them do that, because maybe some of these branches are very far away from the RODC or very far away from the root. So I'll have maybe the root go and synchronize to a child domain or an RODC domain or controller. And that RODC controller is going to go and synchronize to another RODC controller, which is even further away. You could go and do it that way, but it's not something I see happening often. Then our second one here is data store. Data store, depending on how you want to pronounce it. A copy of the data store exists on each domain controller, whether it be the root domain controller, whether it be an RODC domain controller. The Active Directory database uses Microsoft Jet database technology and stores the directory information in that file name I mentioned to you guys earlier, being the ntds.dit file. I don't even know how to pronounce that, but that's where it stores it. Third one being global catalog server. So a global catalog server is a domain controller that hosts the global catalog, which is a partial read-only copy, partial, not a complete RODC. So it's a partial read-only copy of all the objects in multiple domains in the forest. A global catalog speeds up searches for objects that might be stored on a domain controller in a different domain. So if I'm in one domain, let's call it domain 1, and I'm searching for something that might not be in my domain, it might only be in a different domain, my domain controller is going to go and ask the global catalog, hey dude, where is this file called blah blah blah? Global catalog is going to go and check and it's going to say, you know what, it's actually in domain controller 2, we're actually in domain controller 3. The main purpose here is just to speed search results up in the end of the day. So if you've got multiple domain controllers and they don't all have the exact same information and you can have a lot of searches running, this is just going to make your life a little bit quicker and a little bit easier. Then our last one for today is RODC, which I've mentioned so many times. So we know an RODC is a read-only domain controller. We know this is something you generally, for the most part, go and drop at your branch offices. We know that this is a child domain controller. And we also know that for the most part, any technicians or engineers at that branch office, for the most part, can do nothing by default, unless you've specifically delegated permissions to that individual, like we showed you guys in episode 2. So an RODC is a special read-only installation of Active Directory Domain Services. The RODCs are common in a branch office where physical security is not optimal. So if you just don't trust these people at the branch office, I'm not saying that they're idiots. I'm not saying they don't know what they're doing. It could be someone of 20 years experience. You just simply do not trust an individual because, well, he's only been working for your company for about a month or two. Then it might be wise to go and drop an RODC until such time when we start trusting that person. It could also be handy if you've got technicians at a branch office or no technicians at a branch office. So if you've got technicians at a branch office which are junior or they lack the skill and knowledge to go and work on a server, it might be better just to go and drop an RODC there where you can go do all the changes at head office, or the root one I should say, and it's going to replicate that change to the branch office. And as these juniors, assuming there are juniors at the branch office, as they gradually grow, you can gradually give them more and more permissions. In other words, delegate, like in episode 2. So that's one of the main reasons why you want to go and use an RODC. Alright folks, so for today, that is all, but it's not the only things we're going to be discussing about Active Directory. There's definitely going to be multiple videos extra after this about Active Directory components. So today is just the first of many about Active Directory alone. There's going to be many about it. I can't put it all into one video because that's going to kill me, it's going to kill everybody, and it's just very inconvenient if the video is hours and hours and hours long. If you're looking for a specific topic in the video, can you imagine trying to find that? It's going to be a nightmare. So the video is only half an hour long. It's going to be a lot easier for you guys to find what it is you're looking for. Now you get a lot of people that watch these videos and they don't want to actually know everything because they might know some of it already. They're just looking for a specific topic. and this is going to make your life easier if you're looking for a specific topic. So just stay tuned, keep an eye on the episodes that gets released. If it's something you already know, simply just don't watch it. If you see the topic is something that you like to know about, well, then watch it. So yeah, lastly guys, give this video a like if it's been informative. I hope it has been. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. Otherwise, you will not know when a new episode comes out. Maybe there's a juicy topic that you just don't know. And I will see you guys next time on episode 6, guys, which is probably going to be about Active Directory as well. So see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys. If you love me, let me know. If you don't, then let me.